Welcome to Heroes of the Heartland. I'm not in the Heartland anymore. I'm on Capitol Hill, and joining me today is Senator Bernie Sanders and Senator Heidi Heitkamp. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm very curious. Our veterans are so interested in this new bill. I believe it's Senate 1950, a comprehensive veterans care package. For lack, I don't have the correct terminology,
It's a
Senator,
long and complicated title.
but I know it's very comprehensive, and there's a lot of things, and I wish you could explain to my listeners some of what's in the bill.
Well, thank you very much, Eric, for the opportunity. It is a comprehensive bill. It's almost 400 pages, and I think it addresses many of the concerns that we have heard in recent years from the veterans community. And by the way, while I'm here, I want to thank Senator Heitkamp for her outstanding support for veterans issues. Heidi, thanks so much.
Thank you, Bernie.
Let me go over, it'll take me a minute, Eric, but let me just touch on some of the issues that are in the bill. First, for a start, there has been a lot of concern, appropriately so, in the Veterans Committee about a provision in the recently passed Budget Act which cuts cost of living adjustments for military retirees. Senator Heitkamp and I think across the board, most of the senators think that was absolutely the wrong thing to do. Veterans have earned that benefit, and you don't take it away. This legislation restores those cuts completely. So the military retirees will get all of the COLAs that they have been promised. I happen to believe that the community-based outreach clinics around the country play an important role in providing good quality primary care to veterans near where they live. We have a provision in this bill which will make it easier for an additional 27 community health centers, community-based outreach clinics to be built. Eric, there is an issue out there that I have been concerned about for many years, and that is that dental care is not part of VA health care unless it's service-connected. So if somebody got wounded in the mouth, they get dental care, but otherwise they don't. Turns out that dental care all over the country is a really serious problem in terms of ability to find affordable access. For the first time, we begin, not completely, we open the door now through a very significant pilot program involving 30,000 veterans to begin the process of getting dental care as part of VA health care.
And it is so important because just taking care of your teeth can prevent so many other things, as far as heart attacks and everything else.
You got it. People get infections in their mouth, it spreads. It should be part of health care. It hasn't been. We're going to move in that direction.
So in the long run, it's cost savings.
I agree. I agree. And it's the right thing to do. Veterans should not be walking around without teeth in their mouth. As Senator Heitkamp well knows, when we had this disastrous government shutdown a number of months ago, we were, if you can believe this, 7 to 10 days away from veterans not being able to receive their pensions or disabled veterans receiving their checks, which is life and death for many veterans.
I know that all too well. My wife was very concerned.
Okay. And veterans all over the country, and their families were very concerned. 7 to 10 days away because of that government shutdown. What we have in this bill is advanced appropriations for the mandatory accounts at the VA, which essentially means that in, God forbid, and we will do everything we can to prevent another government shutdown, but if it happens again, veterans will get their checks for another year.
So hands off at that point.
Exactly. There is an issue that a lot of younger veterans have been concerned about, who are enjoying the very, very good benefits attached to the post-9/11 GI Bill, educational bill, which has made college affordable and available to hundreds of thousands of veterans throughout this country. It's a very good bill. One of the problems is that if you live in Vermont and you move to North Dakota, it may well be that you can't get the in-state tuition that you could have gotten in Vermont. We changed that to make sure that in every state where a veteran may move, in-state tuition is available, which will save them significant sums of money on their education.
Sort of a reciprocity type.
Exactly, exactly. As part of previous legislation, we promised those soldiers, those veterans who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, that regardless of income, they would have 5 years of free health care through the VA, regardless of their income. It turns out that it's important to extend that another 5 years for a wide variety of reasons. So that's what we do. We go from 5 years now to 10 years that people will be entitled who served in Iraq and Afghanistan to get the free health care.
That's very good.
And again, this is a comprehensive bill, as you can see. We're touching on a lot of issues out there. Heidi is lucky that in North Dakota the economy is really good and unemployment is low. That's not the case all over America.
Well, one of the things that you brought up with the, especially the outreach, I'm sure Senator Heitkamp can attest to this. When you're in a very rural area, those outreach clinics are so very important because a person may have to travel 8-10 hours just to get to a local VA.
Exactly right.
And the other part of this, Bernie, that you might find interesting is that our situation is different on employment. We're employing a lot of young vets who have great skills, either welding or mechanical skills out in the oil patch. They're coming from all over, but we think our community-based outreach clinics aren't prepared for the younger veterans, because we've serviced and provided services to the World War II and to Korean, and now we have this huge influx in Western North Dakota of young veterans with traumatic brain injuries and with post-traumatic stress. And we need to make sure that the services are available. And so it's great to hear what you're doing with the C-Box. It's great to hear about that. But our situation is that we are getting a lot of vets as a great thing, but we need to make sure we have services for those vets in Western North Dakota.
Let me just mention here, with regard to that, I met just last evening at the dinner we did here in the Senate, a gentleman, Senator Bennett brought him, whose daughter served, I can't recall whether it was Iraq and Afghanistan, came home with PTSD and took her own life. Oh. And he is now advocating for all of those men and women who served and who are now addressing what is in fact an epidemic issue of PTSD. And then on top of that, you got TBI and sometimes the combination of both, traumatic brain injury. So we have certainly language in here that is going to help the folks in North Dakota and Vermont and all over this country get their hands around what is an epidemic, and it is a difficult issue. No one has magic solutions to it, but it is an issue that must be addressed.
But you are so correct. We need to reach out with every means for the men and women that serve this nation on that issue right there. We cannot afford to lose anymore. What are some of the particular items in Senate Bill 1950 that you're most proud of, Senator?
Well, you know, this is not my bill. In a sense, I'm the author of it, but really it's a combination of ideas that have come from the veterans community themselves and from other senators. So I don't know, Eric, that I can tell you that there's one provision. This is what I will say, and you've just touched on it. We have so many people coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan with a variety of very, very serious problems, PTSD, TBI, etc. We have our older veterans who are struggling. We have veterans who want to access VA who can't get into VA, and we address that issue. We have, for example, another issue in there, Patty Murray has worked on this one, Senator Murray, is that reproductive health. You have veterans who, as a result of their service, are unable to have kids, and we want to help them be able to do that as well. Employment issues. I mentioned North Dakota is doing well with unemployment. Other parts of the country are not. And when real unemployment today is close to 13%, and states it's even higher than that, we want to reach out to veterans and make sure they have the opportunities to get gainful employment, which is so important. So, Eric, I can't tell you that there's one other area that I wanted to touch on, that is the Caregivers Act. What we said is that for post 9/11 veterans, their family members or people who are caring for them are going to have a kind of assistance they've never had before. We're now extending that to the entire veterans community, not just the post 9/11. So there's not any one issue out there. There's just a whole bunch of issues that came from the veterans communities themselves. They said, Senator, these are the issues that are important to us, and I and other senators, I think, responded. And now we have a really strong, comprehensive bill, which many of the organizations perceive as being the most comprehensive bill brought forth in several decades.
Eric, if I can just add something to this. Frequently people ask me, how are you going to afford this? I said, we fought 2 wars off budget. And no one asked that question. And if we aren't strong enough as a country, if we aren't grateful enough as a country to do this bill plus, then we don't deserve the freedom we have. We have got to live up to our commitment to those veterans. We have got to tell our veterans and our all-volunteer force, if we renege on these commitments, if we don't follow through, how can we guarantee an all-volunteer force? Because we aren't good to our word. And I think there's a lot of lip service in this town about honoring veterans. How you honor veterans is you pass packages like this and you fund packages like this. And so, we really challenge you and your listeners to hold our feet to the fire. Don't just listen to what we say, but watch what we do. And I think I want to say something about Senator Sanders. He's always going to do what he says he's going to do. And he's going to push this, and you will not find a more eloquent spokesperson on the floor of the United States Senate for veterans and for our commitment to veterans. And Bernie, I just think, the work that you do, the leadership you provide, and it comes not just from a great intellect, it comes from his heart.
Well, Senator, thank you very much. And the point that Senator Heitkamp made is every Veterans Day, every Memorial Day, we hear great speeches, right? Everybody knows how to write a great speech thanking our veterans. But the question is, are you going to follow through in real, tangible ways? And that's what Senator Heitkamp and I are asking our colleagues to do right now. And I think we're going to pull this one off, Eric.
Well, that is great to know, because when there's words like equality and mobility and ladders of opportunity, if you take those words to the very basis of what they are, some of these veterans are at that point where they need mobility, physically, actual, literally mobility help. And there's cases where you need equality help in the idea of their disability may not be treated may not be taken care of as well as another disability. And I have found that there's not one greater or less than the others. They're just different with different needs. And that is something that needs to be addressed. Also, the idea of being free to be able to come forward in a very touchy subject, military sexual trauma, and making sure that victims of military sexual trauma are taken care of also, because those are many times wounds that are not seen, but the scar runs very deep for a lifetime. Well, maybe you can share some input on that.
Well, as I said, this bill is almost 400 pages, and we do deal with this issue, and you touched on it very eloquently. It's an issue that victims feel uncomfortable about talking about, whether they're women or, by the way, men as well. Because if people think that men are not victims of sexual assault, you'd be mistaken. And this legislation says that the VA must provide a warm and comforting place for those veterans to come in and feel confident that they're going to get the help and the treatment that they need to deal with that. Let me just also mention, Eric, one of the reasons I don't have to explain to your listeners, to anybody in America, that the U.S. Congress tragically is fairly dysfunctional. But one of the reasons I am cautiously optimistic we can pass this is because many of your comrades in the veterans community, whether it's the American Legion, the DAV, the VFW, the Vietnam Veterans Organizations, the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans Organization, all of those, and every other organization that I know in the veterans community has come forward and said the time is now to do that. And as Senator Heitkamp said just so well a moment ago, it's no longer good enough to give speeches. We got to put our money where our mouth is, and this is the right thing to do.
I know, Senator Heitkamp, you have encouraged, especially the younger veterans that are coming back. I know they all think they're 10-foot tall, bulletproof, and invincible, but it's so important for them to join, well, some of the old school stuff like the American Legion, VFW.
I agree. I think one of the great tragedies of our returning veterans and really the armed services in general, along with National Guard, is this epidemic of suicides. And one of the things that I think can really help is the camaraderie of those service organizations and knowing that there's been other people who've been through it. You're not alone. And so we're going to continue to push for better treatment, better outreach on post-traumatic stress, better outreach on mental health issues, no consequences as a result of reporting it. And we hear this all the time from the brass, oh, that doesn't matter. But then we hear from the rank and file, it does. And we need to stay on top of that. But we've got so many issues to work on. But just understand this, Eric, we just are committed to doing everything that we can to say thank you, not just in words, but in deeds here in Washington, D.C. And I share Senator Sanders' optimism that we're going to get this done because it's the right thing to do, and it's very bipartisan.
I was just about to ask what either one of you would like to say to the listeners, what you would very much want them to know, our veterans out there and their families.
Well, I would just say this. What I have learned since I've become chairman is the cost of war is much deeper than most people appreciate. I think there may be some people who come home from war and it hasn't impacted them and it hasn't impacted their families, but I think that is very much the exception to the rule. Obviously, some people come home with real physical issues, but others come home scarred, as you indicated, with invisible wounds that may last them for a lifetime. I've talked to World War II veterans who still have nightmares about what they experienced. War is an awful thing. And if we're going to put people in that position, as the United States Congress or President of the United States, we owe them an enormous amount. We owe them everything that we can to make their lives whole again. And the truth is, no matter what you do sometimes, it may not be enough. But at least we have got to make 100% effort. And I know that Senator Heitkamp and I are just trying to do that. But the message that I want to convey to the folks out there is don't underestimate what people have gone through, who have served.
That's right.
And as Americans, we have got to do everything to make them whole.
I think Bernie has wrapped it up really very well. We just absolutely need to say thank you. Thank you not only by words and speeches, but thank you in how we react to some of these tragic wounds and certainly some of the silent wounds, but also with opportunity. They gave their life. That's their opportunity cost. Now it's our turn to make sure that they have housing, that we don't have homeless vets, make sure that we have educational opportunities, make sure that we have workplace opportunities. Because most vets, what they want is they want to get back to their normal life and they want to earn a living. And that's going to go a long way to, I think, hopefully addressing some of the other issues. So, Eric, it's been great being on your show. We really appreciate everything that you do and your advocacy, and thank you for being my guest at the State of the Union.
Oh, I'm so honored that you had me here. It was I've had a great time, and I'd like to thank both you, Senator Heitkamp and Senator Sanders, for talking to my listeners and letting them know that you're two senators that get it, and you know that our veterans have paid the debt for the freedom of this country, and you're going to repay that debt by taking care of a vet. And I want to thank both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.